Are we live? Are we doing the thing? I think we're doing the thing. Welcome back to the Fantasy Football Fellas YouTube channel, ladies and gentlemen. It is time for your weekly fantasy football draft with the fellas. Courtesy of our friends over at Underdog Fantasy, Best Ball Mania 4 is live with up to $15 million in prizes, including $3 million to the first place winner. All you got to do, sign up on Underdog, use the code fellas. You get your first deposit matched up to $100 instantly, free. Why not? Just do one draft. And I guarantee you will be hooked. If you love drafting in fantasy football, if that's your thing, and you're not so particular and you don't really care for the lineups and the waivers and the trades and all that, Underdog is your spot. You draft, they take care of your lineup. Super easy, super fun. Again, use the code fellas, sign up on Underdog Fantasy. Again, use the code fellas. Your first deposit matched up to $100. And without further ado, let's get into it. Let's do this thing. Let's do this thing. Here we go. Entering our Best Ball Mania 4 tournament. 30 seconds per pick. Waiting for two more people. YouTube, how's it going? How are we doing? And while I'm drafting, I will be answering questions. Well, let's talk football. Obviously, DeAndre Hopkins. There's a lot to get into with training camp coming up, OTAs, all that fun stuff. So, alrighty. Looks like we will be in the 5 spot. And if I am completely honest, it's not my favorite spot to draft from. I'm very much in favor of trying to get running back early just because you need at least one elite running back when it comes to best ball, in my opinion. You need at least one. But what I have found to be the case is with this pick, you can take a high-end wide receiver, a Cooper Kupp, a Tyreek Hill, and then coming back around on the second round and even into the third round, you can then get your running backs because running backs are just going so much cheaper than usual. So let's do this thing. Justin Jefferson, first overall pick with Jamar Chase following, and you will see running backs go early. That is a normal thing. Sorry, wide receivers. That's a 2-minute minor for just being stupid. But anyway, back with the third pick. This is typically, Tyreek Hill goes at 3. Fascinating. And then McCaffrey at 4, and that leaves me with one of, if not the steal of the first round at this point. It is Cooper Kupp. Okay, Cooper Kupp was on pace for incredible numbers last year. And when I say incredible, it was better than 2021. Okay, like he was going to do damage. And here we go. Let me do this. Can I get? That'll be sufficient. Again, Cooper Kupp is top 3 wide receiver in fantasy football, and there's a good chance that he is not 3, and there's a slim chance that he's not 2 just because of the offense that he's in. So I am A-okay with Cooper Kupp at the 5 spot. After Cooper, it was Travis Kelce at the 6, Austin Eckler at the 7, Diggs 8 with Bijan falling to the 9 spot, which is kind of what we've been seeing lately. Now that Austin Eckler is confirmed to be back in LA with the incentive deal and all that kind of stuff, Eckler has kind of climbed back up into the mid first round, and he's usually followed up by a receiver. In this case, it was Stephon Diggs. No hate at all. And Devontae Adams goes after Bijan Robinson. Pretty chalk first round so far. AJ Brown goes 11, and that's probably the one that I thought was going to go, or that I would have thought, or I think should have gone earlier than Devontae, maybe even Bijan. That's kind of a coin flip at that point. And Garrett Wilson, Amon-Ra St. Brown at the 1-2 turn. That is a very nice start for pick 12. Let's see here. CeeDee Lamb, Jonathan Taylor, Saquon Barkley. I'm crossing my fingers, and I try not to do it, but there is one player that I will be looking for at the spot, and I'll say it. It's Tony Pollard. Okay, and I'm going to regret it because anytime you speak it into existence, you get sniped every single time. So we'll see what happens. But the way that this board has been going, I like Hurts. I like Mahomes. Olave is fine. But like I said, at this point, I need to get one of these running backs on my team. I'm going to grab Tony Pollard. And typically a strategy that I have used is if I'm in the later round, or like I'm a late first round pick, I'm going to target AJ Brown and then stack it with Jalen Hurts. Getting a stack in best ball is kind of it's not a cheat code, but it is a slight advantage over the rest of the people in your league. So that's what I typically try to do when I'm drafting late first round. Sometimes that doesn't happen though, and sometimes we get sniped. But the middle rounds, I'm looking really, 5, 6, 7 spot. It really is Cooper Kupp, Travis Kelce, Austin Eckler, like one of those three. And if I have to reach, I really won't, because that means that a Tyreek Hill or a Christian McCaffrey falls to me. So again, right after Tony Pollard, Devontae Smith went, then Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, team 1, Justin Jefferson, Chris Olave, T. Higgins. That's not a bad start. And that is a fairly nice, I shouldn't say even fairly, that's a really nice start for a 0 running back strategy. Ramondre goes next. So there are a couple running backs that are still on the board that I know of. Derrick Henry and Josh Jacobs. I'm going to hope for Josh Jacobs because I don't want the bye weeks to align. And sure enough, wow, Deebo Samuel went in front. I'm going to go ahead and grab Josh Jacobs. My running backs are now set for at least 4 or 5 rounds. It really is my favorite strategy to do so far, because I will take as many shots as I can on wide receivers after this round, because I have my running back set. When I have Josh Jacobs and Tony Pollard, who are both top 10 last year, I'm at a very good spot with my running backs, and I can use my later rounds to go after wide receivers. Again, Derrick Henry goes right after. Again, Josh Jacobs and Derrick Henry are really these 4 running backs in the 3rd round: Ramondre Stevenson, Breece Hall, Josh Jacobs, and Derrick Henry. They are currently the values in this draft right now, if you're asking me. They are, again, top 10 in their positions. And because wide receivers are just more valuable in best ball, they get pushed down. And that is a big, big, big advantage, in my opinion, for someone that picks before pick 6. So you get 1 through 5, because you get a chance at one of those guys in the 3rd round. So you don't need to force a running back pick in the 1st round. Like I said, after Josh Jacobs went Derrick Henry, Mark Andrews, DK Metcalf, Amari Cooper, Calvin Ridley, and Christian Watson. So we are now seeing a wide receiver run, which is Uh, kind of expected, I guess. Um, just because running backs once once those four in the third round fall or are selected, you got to choose between ETN, Najee Harris, and Jahmyr Gibbs, and no one. It's each one of those guys are guys that are not going to be your favorite picks. They're still good players, but they are not the picks that you want to make. So ETN then goes. So team 12 starts out with Garrett Wilson, Amon-Ra, Lamar Jackson, Travis Etienne. That's a start that I like. Just getting a running back again. Top 15 running back at that point. Nice. DeAndre Hopkins. So team 11 has gone 4 wide receivers in the first 4 picks. So that makes me feel a little bit better about the strategy that I took. And kind of maybe that's not the right way to say it, but it confirms the idea that I have to go get wide receivers. If they are going off the board that quickly, I should be trying to do what I can to go get some of these wide receivers. And I can tell you, I will be happy with really 3 of the available wide receivers you see here. Keenan Allen was one of those. So now we cross our fingers. Boom. That is exactly what I was hoping for. Going Drake London. Drake London to me is a value at 25. And I think a lot of people just look at Drake London's situation with Atlanta and just go, well, they brought in Bijan. Desmond Ritter's your quarterback. You're battling for targets with Kyle Pitts. But people don't really realize that this offense can really take a step forward now. You know, they've been kind of taking baby steps last year and 2 years ago as they're trying to just, accumulate talent and stuff like that. But the pieces seem to be in now. Offensive line play is great. They have Bijan, right? So you got a run game now, and they even had it last year with Algier and Cordero, right? Like everything that they are wanting in their offense is now in place. And Desmond Ridder, I wish I had the stats off the top of my head, but Drake London had one of the better finishes to last year, which was a shame because I think a lot of people they gave up hope on Drake London maybe. But I think this year we could see a really, really nice sophomore leap from Drake London. And especially if you know the talent that is Drake London, you know that he's gonna take a step forward in a big way this year. So after Drake London went Terry McLaurin, went Mike Williams and DJ Moore, Joe Burrow. So team 1 gets a T. Higgins, Joe Burrow stack. That's very nice how the board fell for team 1. And then TJ Hawkinson in the 5th, Michael Pittman, Dameon Pierce, George Kittle then. And we're looking at the board. I could go running back here, but there is a wide receiver, just making sure my bye weeks are in check. Christian Kirk is really one of the last wide receivers on the board at that point that I feel comfortable as my wide receiver 3. You know, there's Brandon Ayuk is kind of on the fringe there. Marquise Brown is another one, but with how late he's going, I'm not really going to reach for him. So Christian Kirk is really the only one that was left on the board that makes me feel really good about the 3 wide receivers that I have. So, after Christian Kirk, maybe I should actually talk about Christian Kirk for a second. A lot of people have Calvin Ridley, including Underdog, have Calvin Ridley ranked ahead of Christian Kirk. I'm not exactly sure that's the case. I wonder if we're going to see kind of Calvin Ridley close the scoring gap between the two at the end of the season, right? And just kind of a end of the season surge from Calvin Ridley. But I really don't think Calvin Ridley kind of takes away a whole lot. Sure, there will be some dents in the target department and in the usage and stuff like that, but they will be able to complement each other really, really well. So like I said, I'm A-okay. I'm A-okay going with Christian Kirk there in the 5th. J.K. Dobbins, Justin Herbert, Kenneth Walker followed by Jackson Smith and Jigba, Chris Godwin, Aaron Jones, Brandon Ayuk, Tyler Lockett. 6th round now. Do I look for another wide receiver? Now there's a quarterback on the board, Trevor Lawrence, which would be very, very nice. And I knew that was going to happen. Let's take a look at this team with Calvin Ridley. I think everyone is going to be looking for some kind of stack opportunity, whether you can do it or not. If a quarterback falls into your lap for the team of a receiver that you already have, it makes too much sense. This is going to be an interesting pick. I'm a big fan of Dallas Goedert. I'm also a big fan of Hollywood Brown. And both are on the board. This is interesting. I'm going to go Hollywood Brown because I'm getting the wide receiver 1 for the Arizona Cardinals this year. And yes, I know that he has Colt McCoy as his quarterback for maybe the first game or two, but again, the volume that the guy is going to get now that he's the wide receiver 1 and getting him as my wide receiver 4 makes me feel makes me feel so much better about Christian Kirk as my wide receiver 3. I have that kind of insurance with Hollywood as my 4th. And again, in the 6th, that's really, really nice. And like I said, Goddard was my other option there. And I did think about that one for a while, but I did then kind of think about, we take a look at the rest of the tight ends that are on the board: Dallas Goedert, Darren Waller, Evan Ingram. There's not really a whole lot in terms of fantasy points that separate those guys, in my opinion. So if there's a tight end for me to target, honestly, I would want to target Darren Waller just because I can get a talent like a Marquise Brown, who's a wide receiver 1 on his team, and I can then still get a decent tight end in Darren Waller. So let's see if that happens. But Dalvin Cook, end of the 6th. Who knows what happens with Dalvin Cook at this point? There were reports that he was willing to take a pay cut, or he might be able. He might want to take a pay cut. Wants Miami, all this stuff. Who knows? But still, in the 6th round, it doesn't matter where Dalvin Cook is going to go. He's going to be a very, very nice piece. The ceiling may not be there anymore with Dalvin Cook just because he is kind of on the older side of, 27? And if he's not, he's 26 going on 27. And that's when we start to see a bit of a downfall in the running back production. So look, if you need a running back 2, just like Team 2 did, right? You've got Ramondre. Dalvin Cook is your guy. Oh, and there goes Darren Waller. And I can't believe this is actually going to happen. We might get Dallas Goedert here because the team picking right now already has their quarterback or has their tight end. I can't. What? Bro, what? So you're telling me the guy that I could have gotten last round is still available here. So now my team is Tony Pollard, Josh Jacobs, Cooper Kupp, Drake London, Christian Kirk, Hollywood Brown, and Dallas Goedert. For those of you watching, first off, hello. Second of all, can you please let me know if that's a W? Because it feels like that's a W. It feels like that's a major, major W. Right. Going from Christian Kirk to Hollywood Brown to Dallas Goedert who I like, each player I talked about in different spots. Like when I took Christian Kirk, I talked about Hollywood Brown saying I didn't want to reach for him, and he fell to me. And then when I took Marquise Brown, I was like, I could have taken Dallas Goedert there, but Goddard fell to me the following round. I feel like that's a W. I feel like that's a major W. I feel like that's a major, major W. So now we got to start looking for potential running back 3 options, just because it's nice to build out some depth. And you, at this point, when you know you have a guy like Tony Pollard and a guy like Josh Jacobs, let's look ceiling, right? Let's look upside here. So maybe a guy, excuse me again. Maybe an Alvin Kamara, maybe. I know who knows how long he's suspended for, but as a running back 3, it's a pretty nice option. I don't mind AJ Dillon, but I could wait on Dillon, and I could probably even wait on Alvin Kamara. So who knows? Maybe I don't need a forced running back pick, but I could also start looking quarterback. I am totally okay with a Deshaun Watson, an Anthony Richardson, a Dak Prescott, any one of those guys, I will be glad to take. So let's see how the board continues to fall, and I'll update here. So after I took Dallas Goedert, went Quentin Johnson, George Pickens, Gabe Davis, Treylon Burks, Brandon Cooks, which I sneaky like Brandon Cooks this year. Rashad White, then followed on the turn with Zay Flowers and Rashad Bateman. If I'm not mistaken, Team 12 took Lamar Jackson, so they have gone heavy stack. And they have 5-6 receivers already. Bateman, Flowers, Lockett, Ayuk, Wilson, and Amon-Ra. That's quite the wide receiver room, and I get it, because in basketball you want as many of those wide receivers as you can. So after Bateman, then went Anthony Richardson, DeAndre Swift, Deshaun Watson, Courtland Sutton, and really, this is an interesting spot that I'm in now. I can tell you already, just looking at my wide receivers and trying to plan out a stack, I will be looking to try to get Kyler Murray later, because he will be coming back at some point this year. But I do need someone to kind of play in his spot, which stinks, because that kind of takes me out of the running for James Conner, who I sneaky like a lot, and especially at the running back 27 spot. But I think I'm going to go David Montgomery here. David Montgomery is an interesting one, because he is sharing the backfield with Jahmyr Gibbs now, but it sounds like he's going to be getting majority of the carries, maybe not so much receiving work, but I just think back to last year when there was a running back who took most of the carries and one did most of the receiving work, and how well that worked out for the guy that got a lot of the rushing work, i.e. Jamal Williams. I'm not saying that David Montgomery will be Jamal Williams in Detroit, but I feel like that's what they want to do in some senses. They want to have their rusher, then they want to have a passing threat out of the backfield. So I'll gladly take David Montgomery as my running back 3. And so to quickly recap real quick, my first pick was Cooper Kupp, followed then in the second round with Tony Pollard, and then in the third with Josh Jacobs. Fourth round with Drake London, big upside with Drake London. Fifth round followed it up with Christian Kirk, Marquise Brown, then Dallas Goedert, and now David Montgomery, as we now look to grab either Dak or Tua. This is my quarterback spot right here. I like Tua. I also like Dak. I know, who knows how much of an injury factor there is to Tua this year. But there were games last year where we saw Miami put up a ton of points. And I want a part of that offense. And honestly, I might get my choice here of, of either Dak or Tua. And as you see, Underdog really hasn't projected like the same, 303 to Tua's 300. There's not much that splits them. So it really is kind of preference. And maybe I take Dak for whatever kind of stack I can get then with Tony Pollard. And I think that's what I'm going to do. Even though I very, very much like Tua. Yeah, man. I'm going to go Dak. We are splitting hairs at that point. But whatever kind of stack there is, I don't think, it's not a Justin Herbert, Austin Eckler type of stack. It's not a Drew Brees or Jameis Winston with Alvin Kamara kind of stack, but just getting teammates. You never know. You never know. It may win you a week. It may keep you up on the leaderboard one week or another. I don't mind that at all. And now this team's starting lineup is really starting to kind of take shape. Next pick that I want to look at is wide receiver. Start to build out some depth there because this is 3 wide receivers. Best ball, you play 3 wide receivers, you play 2 running backs, 1 quarterback, 1 tight end, and 1 flex. So we'll see. We'll see what wide receivers are on the board, but I'm a big fan of Tyler Boyd. I'm a big fan of Zay Jones. Big fan of Adam Thielen. If I want to push back a little bit further, even. But yeah, let me do this. Let's take a look at how the board has kind of fallen. Let me move this over so you guys can actually see the entire board. There we go. That's lovely, isn't it? So after Montgomery, Jameson Williams, James Conner, again, I very much like James Conner, maybe should have been the pick, but since I already have Marquise Brown and then going for Kyler Murray later, didn't really like the idea of getting that. It feels like that's one Cardinal too many, but Juju followed that up, and then Michael Thomas, Kirk Cousins, Odell, Evan Ingram, Javonte Williams. Then I took my quarterback in Dak Prescott just to get kind of a teammate pairing with Tony Pollard. James Cook, Alvin Kamara, Samaje Perine, David Njoku, Pat Freiermuth, Tua, it's Tagovailoa. There it is. And Zach Charbonnet finished up the 9th round and then into the 10th. Shoot, Tyler Boyd. Brian Robinson, Dalton Kincaid, AJ Dillon, Allen Lazard, Devon Achane, Tyler Boyd. And now we wait to see what to do with wide receivers here. That didn't really fall in my favor really at all. Maybe look another running back just because you can play a running back in the flex. Shoot, I got to pick here. I'll go Antonio Gibson. Jarek McKinnon. Yeah, oh well. There's a lot of positive buzz about Antonio Gibson, so maybe there's something there. And as a running back forward, you're kind of vying for flex territory. And look, you're not. I think the lesson to learn there is just get the better player, right? Because it crossed my mind for a second to reach down the board and go for Adam Thielen. But just go get, like I said, just take the better player, right? And not to say that Adam Thielen is a bad player. That's not what I'm saying at all. but just take the value that's on the board. Don't reach down the board, because if you think about it this way too, the more that you reach down the board, the more that there are players above that player that other people like, and you're trying to play keep away a little bit with the other teams in your draft. So Antonio Gibson was my pick in the 10th, followed by Rashad Penny, Aaron Rodgers, Zay Jones, Damian Harris, and now on to the 11th round, Khalil Herbert. And now we're 4 picks away. And we are still a little early on Kyler. I could probably wait till 140. So I'm not going to force that. I'm not going to force it just yet. But I mean, Thielen is still there. Do I take him a backup tight end, which I don't really like because I feel like I need a receiver here? I guess I don't mind Darnell Mooney, because there's nothing that says that he has to play, or that he he very rarely do I think he's going to be kind of in my lineup. Shoot. Just because I'm a Minnesota boy. I'm going to go Adam Thielen. I know I just talked about not reaching, but I don't like. It definitely would have been a reach last round when I talked about Adam Thielen, but I feel like Thielen as wide receiver 5 is not a bad option, right? When the guys in front of him, right? Hollywood Brown, Christian Kirk, Drake London, Cooper Kupp are likely going to be taking the wide receiver and flex spots. And Thielen as a wide receiver 5 on your team, who's likely going to be the wide receiver 1 for Carolina. And I know that Carolina used a second round pick on Jonathan Mingo. Mingo will need some time to adjust to everything. So I'm not expecting a huge, issue with Mingo early on in the season, maybe later on, but that's why I've built up depth with Montgomery and Gibson that can fill in a flex spot if needed. And now we start crossing our fingers because, again, we want Kyler. To get the stack with Marquise Brown, which I feel like we're going to get because he's still a ways down the board. Man, stressful times here. Stressful times. Again, if you excuse me, I ate dinner before going live, so there we go. If you want to get in on the best ball action, there's no better way to get in on the action than with Best Ball Mania 4. Just do one. I guarantee you will fall in love with it. It's all drafting. Underdog takes care of your waivers, takes care of starts and sits, all that kind of. And I shouldn't even say waivers because there is no waivers with Underdog. You draft, Underdog takes care of your lineup from there out. So, like I said, if you want to get in on the best ball action, use a link in the description. Use the code FELLAS. You get your first deposit matched up to $100 for free. So you deposit $50, you get an extra $50 on top of it, and you can join as many drafts as you want. It is simple, it is easy, and you'll fall in love with it. Like I said, use the code FELLAS with the link in the description and get your first deposit match dollar for dollar up to $100. As we're getting close here in the 12th round, let's take a look at who's available on the board at the moment. And Roshan just went. I do not mind Romeo Doubs here. I'm going to reach on Kyler because I don't think Kyler makes it back to me in the next round. Like I said, I don't mind Romeo Doubs, who is the wide receiver 2 in this Packers offense. So there's an advantage in getting that, but like I said, I don't think Kyler makes it back to me by the next round. So take him now, and we will hope for a decent wide receiver to fall again. This is when wide receiver starts to get really, really thin. One I do like in the later rounds is Isaiah Hodgins. Another one I like is Tyquan Thornton, just because he's kind of a wild card right now with the Patriots offense. Robert Woods may not be a super high ceiling guy with Houston, but he figures to get a wide receiver 1 duties, so there's value there. Donovan Peoples-Jones, maybe KJ Osborne, maybe, because you never know just how long it will take a rookie like Jordan Addison to really take on a full workload. So who knows? Excuse me again. So a little bit of a tight end run there, going Cole Kmet and Irv Smith, and then Greg Dulcich. I can tell you right now, when I'm looking back up tight ends, I will definitely be looking at those 2 guys. Zach Ertz, because again, we're talking about the tight end 6 in points per game last year before he got hurt. And no more DeAndre Hopkins. Stafford. Okay. Jalen Hyatt's interesting. I just don't know if he sees the field enough. But man, he's kind of a value at this point. I'm going to go Jalen Hyatt. I don't know exactly what kind of role Jalen Hyatt's going to have this year. But I'm trying to remember whose video I saw on YouTube. It might have been Brett Coleman's, which he's a big underdog guy and highly, highly recommend you check out his channel. He's done a deep dive into a Brian Daboll offense, which is very much a crosser offense, if that makes sense. He has much more terminology in his videos, but essentially he likes to use guys going left to right and right to left across the width of the field. Jalen Hyatt is kind of that receiver. So maybe there's weeks that we see kind of a boom from Jalen Hyatt, which is probably the reason why he's going as high as he is, right? Like, again, Isaiah Hodgins is a wide receiver 80 and Jalen Hyatt's a wide receiver 64, right? That could be, and I will also acknowledge that pick for Jalen Hyatt could fall flat on its face. Like, we may not see Jalen Hyatt at all this year. But again, that's kind of the benefit of having 5 guys that you're comfortable with in front, because you can take a kind of upside pick like Jalen Hyatt. Back to the board here. Tank, Jayden Reed. I love Tank. If you've watched our draft content, you know how much I love Tank Bigsby, and he's kind of been he's been a hot topic lately because people are saying, like, do people really think that Tank Bigsby is going to eat into Travis Etienne's workload? No, but it is. But by saying that, it's kind of a disservice to the talent that it's Tank Bigsby. So, like Etienne will still be the running back 1, but they do use a committee. Bigsby will get carries, and I think the hope for the volume that everyone wants Travis Etienne to get is just not going to be there, because there are guys like Tank Bigsby, and they've come out and said, your JaMycal Hasties and D'Ernest Johnson's, like, we want to get them involved too. So who knows? But Coming up here, I am very, very intrigued with a few names that are on the board here. Not many. But there is one guy I'm going to take, and it's a guy that keeps falling in drafts, and it's Tyler Algier. You know, Algier is definitely going to have a reduced role this year. But the insurance that you get in a guy like Algier, in case, it's worst case scenario, and I don't wish this to happen, but if Bijan gets injured, Tyler Algier steps right back in, and they've used multiple running backs in the past that get 8, 9, 10 carries a game. Who knows? Maybe one of those carries turns into is a 60-yard breakaway. Who knows? Right? But again, there's some kind of role and upside with Algier that he keeps falling in drafts, and I get why. I totally get why. But at some point, you do just kind of have to acknowledge the best case scenario and look at your team and go, right, I've got Antonio Gibson, David Montgomery, Josh Jacobs, Tony Pollard. Like, I can take a Tyler Algier, right, and not feel like I'm dependent on him. So Van Jefferson, Marvin Mims Jr., Zeke Elliott, Jeff Wilson, Dawson Knox followed that pick up. Like I said, this gets to be really interesting. We're getting closer to Isaiah Hodgins, but that's a reach in my book. We could look to take a tight end because there's only one, and I only have one, and there is a tight. I know I've talked about Hayden Hurst and Zach Ertz. Taysom Hill, though. Okay, he's put up 124 and 141 points in his last 2 years. I get it's not consistent enough, but in best ball, sometimes you do just need to take guys that can get you a random 20 some a week. So I'm going to go Taysom, and I'm not going to lie. Taysom is a guy I've been taking a lot in drafts because I see that point total. And again, it's just like fantasy football. Like scoring is the same. Like if Taysom Hill rushes for a touchdown, he gets the points. It's not just receiving points for Taysom Hill. He'll get the rushing touchdowns. He'll get the throwing touchdowns if he has any, right? Like, again, you can't put him higher than like 18, right? Because it's not consistent enough. But for a backup, like, why not? Why wouldn't you, right? I typically will take a quarterback late, a third quarterback late. Because I like Kyler, who knows how long he comes back. Dak has an injury history as well. No, there's a difference. I didn't say injury prone. I just said injury history. So who knows? Like in worst case scenario, they can't play a full season. Getting a guy like Desmond Ridder then who can step in, and I still then get a Drake London stack out of it. Like, yeah, I feel pretty good about that one. Man, wide receivers are falling. But again, I feel pretty good about the receivers that I have. So let's take a look at some of the receivers still available that I could look to bring in, like a Marvin Jones, because who else is there besides Jahmyr Gibbs and Amon-Ra while Jameson Williams is out? Who knows? There's value there. Again, Robert Woods is still available. Isaiah Hodgins, again, like I talked about, like I think people are too low on him this year too, just based on what we saw from last year. So who knows? We'll see how these next 5 picks go. The later rounds, I've learned, here's a free piece of advice. Don't get into the habit of taking the same players in the late rounds over and over and over again. Don't put your eggs all into one basket every draft that you do. just take whoever. Like take different guys in each draft. Because once you kind of, if you continuously take the same guys over and over and over and over again, and the odds that they don't pan out, they then it locks the rest of your lineup in to the starting spots. And what if there are weeks that they don't perform? You get what I mean? Like, what I'm trying to say, don't lock yourself into having to play your starters I shouldn't say it like that, but you know what I'm saying. 205. I pick 197. I'm going to go Robert Woods. Likely wide receiver 1. So who knows? But as a depth piece, like it's fine. Let's look at some other tight ends because Goddard's nice. Taysom Hill, who knows? Just in case if like Zach Ertz, I get sniped on Ertz. I mean, Hayden Hurst is still an option. Noah Fant is still an option. Jelani Woods. I am a big fan of Jelani Woods. Really any of those guys. And again, we're still looking at Herbert as our not Herbert, Ritter as a potential quarterback 3 to get a stack then with Drake London in case Dak gets injured and Kyler takes forever in coming back. I got to say, though, so far with his draft, I've been very, very pleased. And I'll kind of recap the team once it's completely finished. But I love my wide receiver core. I love my running back depth. I love the quarterbacks that I'll have. I like the upside with Taysom Hill. I like my team a lot. And I think it's fair to say that this draft has been very favorable in how it's fallen. Because again, if you were here earlier, I had Christian Kirk and I thought about taking Marquise Brown, but that was a reach. And so I waited. I passed on Marquise Brown and I took Christian Kirk and I ended up getting Marquise Brown a round later. And then when it was time to pick Marquise Brown, I thought about taking Dallas Goedert and I was like, yeah, I got to take the receiver. And Goddard still fell to the round after. So I was like, you know what? Why not? So, and thankfully Desmond Ridder fell there. So we officially have completed the quarterback room there. Look, Desmond Ridder likely won't be putting up superstar numbers, but again, it is insurance when you've got guys with injury histories like Kyler and Dak. So last pick coming up here. And we have all these tight ends. I don't know if I necessarily want to go tight end. Just because it seems kind of like a waste. But again, it's the 18th round. We're throwing darts. We're just throwing darts. So who knows? Maybe let's do this. Let's talk about some guys that are still available that there's value in. One of those guys I had talked about earlier is Marvin Jones. Until Jameson gets back, it's him and Amon-Ra and Jahmyr Gibbs. That's about it. I think there's value in a guy, Zach Ertz, obviously. He was the tight end 6 fantasy points per game last year before he got hurt, and no more. No more DeAndre Hopkins. So I think there's value there. Obviously, there's value in your handcuffs, right? For me, since I've got Tony Pollard, right? There's Deuce Vaughn and Malik Davis, and Deuce just went, but there's value in going and getting handcuffs. Like Michael Carter isn't a bad option. I don't mind Zach Evans because who knows if the Rams actually commit to Cam Akers. That's always been the fantasy mystery, is when are the Rams going to commit to Cam Akers, like, ever? So there's value with that. And I think I'm gonna go Ertz if he's available. Because again, we're talking tight end 6 and fantasy points per game before he got hurt last year. I'm gonna go Zach Ertz, and that'll finish up my team. So, let me see if I can highlight. I can't. Oh well. So let's just take a look at my team real quick. Maybe I'll wait for the screen to change in just a second, but this draft was really, really favorable. I feel like I've got a good, solid starting lineup, and I've got pieces behind that can rotate in if needed. You know, Josh Jacobs is only held to 10 and Monty puts up a 21, something like that, right? Like, you know, Marquise Brown only puts up 8, but Thielen puts up 14. Like, I'll take that, right? Like, there's value with everyone that I got. Maybe if there's anything I would have changed, it might have been to instead of taking a Taysom Hill, you know, taking another receiver. But again, that's dart throws and Taysom Hill's points. So definitely don't mind it at all. And let's see how Team 1 finishes up this draft on auto pick, of course. That's how it always goes. Let's see. Does that complete the draft? Hello. Okay, regardless, let's just quickly run through the team that I drafted on behalf of the fellas. Started off with Cooper Kupp in round 1, and then followed up with Tony Pollard in the 2nd. Josh Jacobs then in the 3rd, getting my bookend running backs, and then I can just look pass catchers and wide receivers. 4th round, I took Drake London. 5th round went Christian Kirk and Hollywood Brown in the 6th. Then I went Dallas Goedert in the 7th. David Montgomery, my running back 3 in the 8th. Dak Prescott, my quarterback 1 in the 9th. Antonio Gibson, my running back 4 in the 10th. I would have liked a Tyler Boyd or even an Alan Lazard, but they went before me. So just went with the best player that I saw on the board, and that was Antonio Gibson. And maybe I may be drinking a little bit of the Antonio Gibson Kool-Aid, just with all the positive smoke that there's been about Gibson so far this year, but who knows? It's my running back 4. Follow that up with Adam Thielen in the following round, then took Kyler as my quarterback 2. Jalen Hyatt, Algier, Taysom Hill. Hyatt and Algier are backups on their teams right now, but they serve a purpose in case someone gets hurt or anything like that. Taysom Hill, again, kind of a controversial one because I think a lot of people are going to say, no, I don't really want that on my team. But again, everything that he does counts as fantasy points. Rushing yards, passing touchdowns, rushing touchdowns, receiving touchdowns, receptions, yards, all that stuff. It counts. So sometimes you do kind of have to time up you just hope that the weeks are timed up where, in my case, Dallas Goedert only puts up 6 points. Just hope that week Taysom Hill is putting up like 15. I'm fine taking that chance as my backup. Robert Woods then after Taysom Hill, Desmond Ridder as my quarterback 3 as injury insurance for guys that have injury histories in Kyler and Dak. Again, Ridder, I get a stacked in with Drake London too, so lots to like there. Robert Woods, wide receiver 1 for Houston. Maybe not super high ceiling, But again, the situation I like as a wide receiver 7 on my team. Right? Yeah, because high is my 6. See, smart. Then wrapped it up with Zach Ertz, tight end 6 in fantasy points per game last year with no DeAndre Hopkins anymore. Why not? And that's a stack that went Kyler too. So, like I said, I'm very, very pleased with this draft. A lot of things went my way. Sometimes you do need a little bit of luck. But that's the same for every kind of fantasy football league. So, all right, y'all. Well, I'm glad y'all could join and followed along on this draft. We do this every Wednesday, or at least we try to do this every Wednesday, and it may not be the same person, but it's either me or Lucas or Cameron. You can follow me on Twitter, and my link to my Twitter is in the description, I believe. But if it's not, my handle is Tyler_Plath. You can follow me over there. You can follow Lucas at Lucas Wenzel. It's pencil, but with a W and no I. Simple enough. Cameron Lawrence, the third fella, thinking about him because he's been battling a nasty case of the sunburns. So send your well wishes to the man and his Twitter handle as I'm pulling it up here. CamLawFF. You follow the fellas on Twitter at the FF Fella. No, FF Fellas. There it is. Instagram, the FF Fellas. YouTube, TikTok, anywhere you get your podcast, the Fantasy Football Fellas. If you're not subscribed, would you consider doing so and leaving a like and maybe a comment saying what you think about my team, or if there's another team in this draft that you like? Go ahead and leave it in the comments. And we will be back next week, I believe, with podcast episode. Oh, I forgot. Oh, I'm a stooge. I didn't say this earlier. The 2023 Fantasy Football Fellas Draft Guide is dropping tomorrow. And for only $10, you get full rankings in PPR, half PPR, standard. You get player write-ups. You'll get videos on players down the road. $10. That's all it is. There's a lot of things you can get for $10, and I can guarantee you they are not as good a value as the Fantasy Football Fellas Draft Guide. So be looking for that to drop. You can find that in the link tree on any of our social pages, and that's how you can get it. But that'll do it for this live Draft Wednesday. Thanks for tuning in, and we will see you next week. Deuces.